Hello, everybody, and welcome. Thank you for spending some time with us today as we talk about resource optimization with Amazon DevOps Guru and AWS Systems Manager. My name is Joe Cudby, Principal Go-to-Market Specialist with Builder Experience here at AWS, and I'm joined by Oren.
Hi, everyone. My name is Oren. I lead the Operations Management Products category within AWS Systems Manager. We provide you with management tools, services, and products to help you manage your operations load end to end.
So with that, let's hop in and talk about this notion of resource optimization. So a couple of different things that we're going to hit. Why optimize resources? Like, why is that something that happens? And then secondly, do we have some tools, some examples of tools that can help you as an AWS customer actually figure out how and when and what to optimize? So why optimize? And I think as we go through this notion of customers on their cloud journey, you never get it right first time, right? We're learning here. We're understanding how best practices work. We're understanding how to consume resources. We're understanding what resources work. We're modifying our applications. It's a very fluid and dynamic environment. And so what we have found working with customers is that they really benefit from periodically reviewing your infrastructure. So even you sort of have this periodic process. And so why do that? And there's two primary advantages for our customers. The first is cost. So we provide guidance and tools for customers to optimize their spend on AWS, right? Our objective here is to help you achieve your outcomes in an optimal way. So cost being the first lever of that. But secondly, and tying back this overall topic of conversation today, from an operations perspective, continuous operations is best served with predictable infrastructure and the availability of resources. If you have too much or not enough of something, it can really cause operational problems. So cost aside, right? But you can really run into operational challenges. And so as we think about this, and specifically with the tools that we're talking about today, I'll also give you a little bit of detail about how DevOps Guru thinks about this and what we call our proactive insights. And so as we've sort of been talking about throughout the day, DevOps Guru can function in two ways. Reactive, there is a problem happening, and proactive, which is, hey, we've seen something about your infrastructure and you might want to take care of this before it becomes a problem, and either from a cost perspective or potentially an operations perspective. And so the proactive insights are designed to give our customers advanced warning of resource constraints. And so here are some examples. So we enable our customers to take advantage of optimizing configuration and resource allocations. And what we see is customers who are on this journey to understand sort of native cloud architectures, right? Serverless architectures. These can be really intriguing, but can be kind of complicated to understand how to optimize. And so the examples you see here in terms about Lambda functions, either limits set too high or too low, DynamoDB, either under-provisioned or over-provisioned, or potentially throttling, slowing you down. And then with Kinesis, are there too many shards or insufficient shards? And I think this idea of, back in the day when you had a server, right, it had its capability. It didn't really scale. It just did what it did. But now we're in this world of very dynamic and very small pieces of infrastructure that support sort of native cloud infrastructures and microservices and these other various things, that there's so many pieces out there to these cloud native architectures that understanding how they all work together can be a challenge, right? And so when we think about proactive insights, here's an example. So from within the DevOps Guru console, you might get an insight like this, right? Lambda functions underutilized. And then when you click on where it says recommendation there, you actually dive into the details. And so within the details, it says, based on your usage, we recommend you set provision concurrency to 2 to maintain a balanced utilization of 65%. Basically, the customer's over-provisioned here. And then if I were to click on the link there under resource name, it would take me to the very specific resource, and I could modify the configuration. And the fact that this is an ongoing notification means this is something we're seeing in the background, and so we're providing customers opportunities to sort of go fix this. And the nice thing here is the part of the customer's operations group that's sort of responsible or has Lambda as part of their sort of portfolio, they can keep an eye on these functions and then go proactively make those changes, make those updates. And so as we think about this, I'm going to hand over to Arn now to talk a little bit about Systems Manager.
So the amazing thing about DevOps Guru is that usage of kind of your AI ops, your intelligence, your ML to go find issues in your infrastructure. And the issues can be anything from operational issues through to cost optimization issues like we just saw. Systems Manager comes in and tries to take a step back from the specifics and tries to take a holistic view across all of your resources and to centralize. Instead of finding things itself, it will centralize a lot of those findings from services such as DevOps Guru. So essentially, you could think of DevOps Guru as kind of supercharging AWS Systems Manager, and then you can use Systems Manager to supercharge your management of all of those findings across all of your resources, across all of your organization. So with products such as Ops Center, Change Manager, and Application Manager, you can centralize the management of those findings, be them operational, cost optimization, etc., across your applications, your organizations, regions, etc. You can then run automation using Systems Manager automation documents to go and remediate and manage those resources. A very common pattern is to have automatic right sizing of resources using automation documents that are triggered from findings from DevOps Guru. And then you can also use AWS Systems Manager inventory to collect extra metadata that you can use to then feed into your automation to make more intelligent decisions. For example, these packages need to be here, those packages need to be there. I can segregate and kind of slice and dice my infrastructure based on what is found within my inventory. So as an example, that we very often see in terms of how this works from an architectural perspective, you are at the end of the day, most of the time, you're going to use some kind of infrastructure as code. For our example here, we're going to use CloudFormation. You're going to use CloudFormation stacks. You can treat each CloudFormation stack as a separate application. It's a very common pattern that we see is customers using a stack to represent a single application. Those will then feed data into services such as CloudTrail, CloudWatch, etc. That then gets fed into DevOps Guru. DevOps Guru then generates those insights. And then the question is, what do you do with those insights at that point? And so there's a little tick box that you can enable within DevOps Guru. That's all you need to do. It's a single click. And then that will enable sending those insights over to Systems Manager. Those get centralized in Ops Center. It's named for that. It's the central location for all of your operational items to kind of come together, to aggregate. And then from Ops Center, you can send them off. You can essentially use this as your kind of next step event bus. You can view them directly within your management console for manual work. If you want to go look and see what is available, what's affecting my resources, where, if I want to group things by resource, by application, etc. And you can also then connect it into your existing third-party ticketing systems such as Jira and ServiceNow. And at the end of the day, the point is to get these down to your users. Your users here being anything from your kind of DevOps /SRE/devs who are managing your operations, and all the way up to management who are looking for reporting. And then as part of this, you can also feed this directly from Ops Center into your automation systems in order to go trigger a lot of that right sizing. So a lot of the patterns that we generally see and recommend is that you don't sit there constantly tweaking your cost optimizations or your operations manually. We try to avoid ClickOps as much as possible, but rather feeding into an automation document or step functions or Lambda, or whatever kind of automation system is your preference, in order to automatically do right sizing. So some of the benefits from Systems Manager that you can see, we have some screenshots on the next slide, which is slowly coming up. What you can see here is, for example, Application Manager, which is one of the services that then feeds from Ops Center, which allows you to take a look at a specific application. So this is a demo application here called Mobile App. It will allow you to break down the costs specifically to that mobile application. And the beauty of that is that sometimes even with advanced cost optimization tools or cost exploration tools such as Cost Explorer, sometimes it can get a little bit hard to centralize not just the costs of your application so that a specific team can look at their own costs, but also the monitoring that goes along with it, the compliance from AWS config, the various resources that are connected into it. And Application Manager will bring all that together in one place, allowing you to make informed cost optimization choices where you can say not only, okay, this is costing me a lot, but also this is costing me a lot relative to the resources that are being used, relative to the compliance items that are being used, relative to the amount of traffic that's coming through, because I can see that in the monitoring tab that's in Application Manager. Another feature that we have is called Systems Manager Explorer, and Explorer will allow you to do a very targeted, actually, optimizations for instances. by bringing together. So we have cost optimizer specifically for instances, for EC2 instances, and the benefit there is we generally will have a very common journey to the cloud. Is you start with a very small number of EC2 instances. You take one specific application, you have it running, it runs very nicely, and then traffic increases over time, and suddenly you're looking at a fleet of 1,000 EC2 instances, multiple thousands of EC2 instances, potentially running across lots of different accounts, as well as across lots of different regions. And what we also will often see is that traffic patterns will differ between different regions, but it's very easy to just say automatically, okay, I'm going to put the same instance type, the same disk space, etc., across all of my instances, across all of my accounts in my regions, even though they don't actually need it, because we start from one region that's higher traffic and we start expanding to lower traffic regions. So Explorer will help you bring all of that together from Cost Optimizer, from EC2 Cost Optimizer across all of your organization, and allow you to identify where you are actually under provision or over provision. So you want to see both of them, right? You want to see under provision so you can avoid your operational issues later on, and you want to avoid over provisioning to avoid bleeding cost for no reason. So Explorer will bring that all together. Again, it will feed that into Op Center so that you can have a centralized place to go and manage those items so that you can take specific actions. For example, again, you can automate them or drive actions within your own organizations to say, hey, let's go evaluate these EC2 instances. Let's go take a look at what's running on them. We can connect those into, for example, AWS config rules to say, maybe they need to be over provisioned for various reasons because they have spiky traffic. So you can connect that into your CloudWatch, traffic logs, traffic graphs in order to see what the traffic over time is over there. But it allows you to have that central location where you can have a snapshot of this is what's running, this is where it's running, this is why it's running, this is what it's doing, and am I over provisioned? And in which case, now I should change to a different instance type, for example, or to a lower disk space or disk size, etc.
So, Aaron, I got a question for you. And so it's interesting, I think, in this conversation around sort of periodic review versus being notified that you could make a change, right? And what do you sort of see? Because I know when we talk to customers, they like this idea of sort of DevOps guru, like telling them, hey, this is a thing you could go do now, versus, hey, we're going to do sort of a quarterly, more holistic review. And so I know when we sort of talk to customers who own like this sort of Lambda's like their portfolio, right? And they're getting these periodic notifications, that's something they could deal with. How do you see that sort of bubbling up as bigger organizations? Does it seem to be more sort of quarterly type reviews? Are they doing that holistically? Like how does that play out in your world?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, actually. We actually see it as part of people's journey to the cloud. We will very often see a lot of people doing, when they're tentatively going onto the cloud, they will often start with their quarterly reviews. They're interested right now. Their interest in the beginning is, let's go onto the cloud, and they're not thinking about optimizations yet. And so they're looking at it kind of periodically. And then they're looking to pull, for example, something like Explorer, they're looking to pull like a static report that says, a snapshot report. What we find is that over time, as customers progress on this journey of getting DevOps together, so melding your operations with the teams that are specifically actually running their applications, where teams actually start caring about their resource usage and optimization, they're looking for that more real-time notification that they're getting from services like DevOps Guru, where they're getting pushes that say, hey, you're heavily over provision. And so we find that it's over time, this kind of, if you look at it as a ratio of like 50% snapshot, 50%, immediate, over time, the pendulum definitely swings more towards, I want my more real-time notifications. I want to get a notification immediately. I mean, we have customers that, depending on the kind of over-provisioning, will hook this up into another service that's part of Systems Manager called Incident Manager, and they'll actually get pages if they're going over specific limits within for their cost optimization limits. But again, it's kind of changes over time. There is always value to the snapshots, right? So we'll find that as well, right? So periodically you want to get a snapshot for reporting, upwards towards leadership. But we find that, again, as more customers get into more teams owning their own costs, they're more looking for that immediacy that they're going to get from DevOps Guru.
Interesting. I mean, I know in sort of historically in that journey, it's very much like that, right? It's like, okay, we need to understand what can we get And then I think do you see it as sort of also like as you mentioned, right, with teams having more ownership and accountability, I think I see the same thing, right? There's a sort of evolution of sort of going from almost like a centralized operations organization to distributing it out to more of the people who own this piece of the portfolio, right? Because cloud's complicated. It's not like, I remember when I worked in managed hosting, right? We'd have systems engineers and network engineers. It doesn't really work quite that way anymore, right? With the added complexity of all these various layers, right? And it definitely feels more like a portfolio, right? I own Lambda and something, or I own this application, and so I need those notifications to be more sort of precise and immediate.
So, Joe, I've heard some pretty cool stories about customers using DevOps Guru to find kind of weird, wonderful, and obscure findings across their large and complex infrastructures. Do you have an example that ties into the cost optimization story we've been talking about?
It's funny you mentioned that, because actually I do. So there was a customer that we were working with that was experiencing application slowness, and so when they were working through the outage call, and they were looking at the application serving instances, right? And what we actually were able to do, we surfaced an insight was actually related to database replication. And because the database replication had slowed down, it was causing issues to bubble up through the application because of poor database performance. And so it was actually a sort of a reactive insight, but in that instance, what they were able to discover is that they had replicas running that they didn't need, and that those were causing database performance problems, and that was bubbled up through the application. And they had no idea that the replication was actually causing an instance. So actually, in that sort of reactive insight, actually did kind of kill two birds with one stone. They gave them a performance, or sort of an continuous operations insight, which actually then allowed them to manage costs by managing their replicas more effectively. So yeah, pretty cool.
And I love stories like that, because at the end of the day, it's not, I mean, the dollar value of cost optimization is very, very important. But what we often find, more often than not, we find that optimizing your costs also helps you optimize your operations, because there's something inevitably wrong. I mean, that finding would have saved them also a lot of time to go find that one errant replica. Must have been, I mean, that's in a mountain of absolute infrastructure or data would have been incredible savings there as well.
Yeah. And frankly, I think if you have conversations with CFOs, right, yeah, they'd like you to keep the dollars down, but they also don't want you to upset customers, right? And so really, if we focused on continuous operations and customer experience, and then think about how do we optimize cost to deliver an optimal experience, I think that's the right way. I mean, that's certainly the way we think about it for our customers, right? How do we give you an optimal experience at a reasonable cost, as opposed to how do we squeeze out every last dollar, but that in fact gives you a worse experience. And I think we hear this from customers too, sort of on this journey, right? There's an initial sort of, hey, we've got all this stuff deployed, let's optimize it. And as you mentioned before, right, what's underutilized, what's overutilized. And then I think there's this notion of as we think about more sort of observability and more into customer experience, it is optimizing for operations, which then has a cost impact, but also has a revenue and a customer experience upside.
That's absolutely brilliant. It's one of the things I love about DevOps Guru and the whole suite of tools, is that it really does, like you said, it mirrors how we operate internally, right? Where we're not chasing the dollar specifically, right? We're chasing that experience, right? We're chasing that operational rigor. And then through that, cost optimization is one of the tools that we use to ensure that we're meeting that high, availability, reliability bar that our customers have come to expect. And if we can help our customers do the same for their customers, it's a win-win all around.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for spending some time with us today. Again, my name's Joe Kirby. Great to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I'm Oren Nachman. Thank you again for spending time with us.